Elon Musk confronted about failed rockets on stage. His reply silences critics. The morning started like any other at the Four Seasons Houston. Elon Musk sat on the edge of his hotel bed, scrolling through his phone with trembling hands. 3 days without proper sleep had left dark circles under his eyes, visible even in the dim light of dawn. "Sir?" A knock at the door made him flinch. "The car will be ready in 20 minutes. "Yeah," he called back, his voice hoarse. He glanced at his reflection in the bathroom mirror. The crisp black suit couldn't hide how exhausted he looked. His phone buzzed again. Another message from the SpaceX emergency response team. Additional debris found 3 miles offshore. Environmental team assessing impact. Media inquiries increasing. "Fuck," he muttered, dropping the phone on the bed. The third explosion in 2 months, each one worse than the last. He could still see the fireball in his dreams, the massive starship breaking apart like a toy thrown against concrete. The drive to the Space Innovation Summit should have taken 15 minutes. Instead, it stretched to 45 as protesters blocked the entrance to the convention center. Through the tinted windows, Musk could see their signs. "Stop killing our oceans." SpaceX equals Space Rex. Musk's ego is destroying Earth. "We can use the back entrance, sir," his driver suggested. "No," Musk said firmly. "Front door. Let them see me." The security team formed a tight corridor through the crowd. Someone threw a water bottle that splashed against his shoulder. "Murderer!" a woman screamed. "There's oil all over our beaches!" Inside the convention center's green room, his PR team was waiting. Sarah, his new head of communications, jumped right in. "We've prepared a modified speech," she said, handing him a tablet. More apologetic tone, emphasis on learning from mistakes. "I know what to say." Musk cut her off. "Elon, please," Sarah insisted. "The media's waiting for any slip-up. The stock's down 18% this week, alone. We need to—" His phone buzzed again. This time it was a text from his ex-wife. "X is crying at school again. The other kids won't stop talking about the dead dolphins. Please call him." "Sir?" Sarah was still talking. "The governor's office called. They're considering emergency environmental regulations. We need to address." "Give me a minute," Musk interrupted, walking to the window. Below, he could see more protesters arriving. His phone kept buzzing. SpaceX board, requesting emergency meeting. Tesla shareholders, demanding statement. Twitter, number Musk disaster, trending worldwide. Environmental Protection Agency, press release, imminent. A young intern appeared at the door. "5 minutes to stage, Mr. Musk." He nodded, straightening his tie. The convention hall was packed, every seat filled, people standing along the walls. He recognized faces from NASA, Boeing, Blue Origin, and what seemed like every major news outlet in the country. The introduction was brief. "Please welcome the founder and CEO of SpaceX and Tesla, Elon Musk." Polite applause, nothing more. As he walked to the podium, his hands were shaking so badly he had to grip the edges to steady himself. "Thank you," he started, his voice barely steady. "As we gather today to discuss the future of space exploration." His phone vibrated in his pocket. Without thinking, he glanced at it. A new video was trending on Twitter. Live footage from the Texas coast. More dead fish washing up on the beaches, covered in rocket fuel residue. He faltered for a moment, then forced himself to continue. "The path to making humanity a multiplanetary species has never been. How many more species have to die first?" The voice cut through the silence like a knife. A woman in a blue blazer stood up in the third row, her face flushed with anger. The security team tensed, but something in her voice made Musk pause. "My brother's fishery is destroyed," she continued, her voice breaking. "Everything our family built for 3 generations, gone in 2 months, because you couldn't wait to play with your rockets." The room erupted in murmurs. Cameras swiveled from Musk to the woman in back. Security started moving toward her, but Musk raised his hand. "Wait," he said softly, almost too quietly for the microphone to pick up. For the first time in years, he felt tears forming in his eyes. The woman wasn't finished. "You stand there in your expensive suit talking about Mars, while our community is dying. Have you even seen what your failures did to our home? Have you looked into the eyes of the people whose lives you've ruined?" More phones came out, recording every moment. This wasn't the rehearsed speech about the future of space travel anymore. This wasn't another tech conference with friendly audiences and softball questions. This was real. This was raw. And Elon Musk, the man who always had an answer for everything, found himself speechless on stage, facing the human cost of his ambition. His hands gripped the podium tighter as the room waited for his response. The next words out of his mouth would either save or destroy everything he'd built. And for once in his life, Elon Musk had no idea what those words should be. The silence stretched for what felt like hours. In the front row, a Reuters journalist was typing frantically on his laptop. Someone coughed. A camera clicked. "Security," Sarah whispered from the side of the stage. "Remove her." "Number." Musk's voice was barely audible, then stronger. "Number. Let her speak." The woman in the blue blazer seemed surprised by this. She'd clearly expected to be dragged out. Instead, Musk stepped away from the podium, walking to the edge of the stage. "Your brother's fishery," he said. "Where, exactly?" "Matagorda Bay," she replied, her voice still shaking with anger. "Not that you care. Your people won't even return our calls." Musk pulled out his phone, and for a moment, everyone thought he was trying to distract himself. Instead, he pulled up a map. "Near Port O'Connor?" he asked. You know it?" "I flew over it last week, in the helicopter." His voice grew quieter. "I saw the damage, but I was too much of a coward to land, to see it up close." The admission sent a shock through the room. This wasn't the Elon Musk they knew, the one who tweeted memes about his critics, who brushed off failures as stepping stones to success. A young man in the fifth row stood up. "My dad's a shrimper out of Freeport. He says the waters are dead. Nothing's living where your rocket parts fell." Then a woman near the back. "Our beach house rental business is ruined. Nobody wants to swim in rocket fuel." More people started standing. Each had a story. Each had lost something. The security team looked increasingly nervous, but Musk remained still, listening to each voice. Sarah was practically jumping up and down at the side of the stage, desperately trying to catch his eye. The PR strategy was falling apart in real time. This would be streaming live across every news network. "Mr. Musk." A familiar voice cut through the growing noise. It was Anderson Cooper from CNN, who'd been quietly observing from the press section. "You've previously said that the environmental impact of these launches was minimal and manageable. Do you still stand by that assessment?" The room fell silent again. It was a perfect moment for damage control. For corporate speak about ongoing assessments and commitment to improvement. For the kind of non-answer answers that CEOs were trained to give. Musk looked down at his phone one more time. A new message from his son had just popped up. "Dad, please make them stop. Everyone's sharing pictures of dead sea turtles. They're saying it's our fault." His hand, still gripping the podium, had gone white at the knuckles. In that moment, he wasn't the world's richest man. He wasn't the tech visionary or the space pioneer. He was just a man facing the consequences of his choices. And somewhere deep inside, past the exhaustion and the fear and the crushing weight of responsibility, something broke free. Something real. Something human. "I used to read about the early days of the space program," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "About how entire communities in Florida rallied around Cape Canaveral. How they took pride in being part of humanity's greatest adventure." He paused, looking directly at the woman in the blue blazer. "And instead, I've made you hate everything we're trying to build." The admission hung in the air like smoke after an explosion. Nobody moved, nobody spoke. Even the journalists had stopped typing. "Sir," a stagehand whispered urgently. "We're way off schedule. The next speaker." But Musk wasn't finished. The dam had broken, and years of pent-up emotion were flooding out. What happened next would be replayed millions of times, analyzed endlessly, and mark a turning point in the relationship between big tech and the communities they impacted. Elon Musk, tears now visible in his eyes, was about to show the world something it had never seen before. A titan of industry stripped bare of all pretense, facing the raw truth of his failures. The silence in the auditorium was deafening. Elon Musk's fingers were still gripping the podium, his knuckles white with tension. The past week had been a blur of crisis meetings and sleepless nights. But this moment, this was different. "Mr. Musk?" Sarah, his PR chief, was at his elbow. We should take a break. We can resume after. Number. His voice was barely a whisper. Then louder. No breaks. His phone buzzed again. It was his mother, May. The third call in an hour. He could still hear her voice from their conversation last night, breaking as she read him the headlines. Musk's Mars dreams destroy marine life. Elon, they're crucifying you in the press. The woman in the blue blazer, he now knew her family's livelihood had been destroyed, was still standing, waiting for a real answer. Not PR speak, not corporate jargon, a real answer. 7 days ago, Musk began, his voice hoarse. I was having breakfast with my youngest son. He stopped, swallowed hard. He's 10. Usually, he can't stop talking about rockets. About Mars. He used to tell everyone at school that his dad was going to make humans a multi-planetary species. The room was absolutely still. Even the photographers had stopped clicking their cameras. That morning, he wouldn't look at me. He just stared at his cereal. Then he showed me his phone. Musk's voice cracked. His classmates had been sending him videos. Dead fish washing up on beaches, oil-covered birds, all with the same message, your dad did this. A murmur went through the crowd. Sarah was frantically signaling from the side of the stage, mouthing, "Stop." But Musk continued. I told him what I've been telling everyone, that failures are part of innovation, that you can't make an omelet without breaking eggs. He laughed bitterly. Corporate bullshit. The kind of thing they teach you to say in CEO school. Another buzz from his phone. Tesla's stock had dropped another 3% in the last hour. The board was demanding an emergency meeting. You know what he asked me? Musk's voice was getting shakier. He asked, Dad, are you a bad person? A young SpaceX engineer in the front row looked down at his hands. Someone near the back of the room sniffled. I couldn't answer him, Musk continued, because lately I've been asking myself the same question. An older man stood up near the middle of the room. I've been in aerospace for 40 years, Mr. Musk. Everyone has failures. That's not why we're angry. We're angry because you rushed these launches. You ignored safety protocols. You're right. The admission silenced the room again. You're absolutely right. Sarah was now practically jumping up and down off stage, waving a piece of paper. Probably a carefully worded statement from the legal team. Musk ignored her. Last night, he said, I got a call from one of our senior engineers. Tom, are you here? A man in the third row reluctantly raised his hand. Tell them what you told me, Tom. They need to hear it. I need to hear it again. Tom stood, slowly, clearly uncomfortable being put on the spot. Mr. Musk, I don't think... Please. Tom cleared his throat. Last night, I told Mr. Musk that 3 months ago, my team identified a potential issue with the fuel containment system. We requested a delay for additional testing. The request was denied. More murmurs. A reporter started to stand, but Musk waved him down. Why was it denied, Tom? Because. Tom looked around nervously. Because it would have meant missing the launch date you'd announced on Twitter. The admission hung in the air like a physical thing. Someone gasped. A board member in the front row put his head in his hands. Musk's phone buzzed again. This time it was a text from his ex-wife. X won't stop crying. He says he's sorry he showed you the videos. Please call him. That was the moment something broke inside Elon Musk. His shoulders slumped. And for the first time, the audience saw not the tech titan, not the world's richest man, but a father wrestling with the weight of his failures. He stepped away from the podium, pulled a chair from the side of the stage, and sat down. The simple action, so human, so vulnerable, sent shock waves through the room. CEOs didn't sit on stage. They didn't show weakness. They didn't... I need to tell you about Tuesday night, he said, his voice quiet, but carrying in the silent room. About what really happened when we got the first environmental impact reports. Sarah was now frantically dialing on her phone, probably trying to get anyone, to stop what was happening. But it was too late. Elon Musk, tears now visible in his eyes, was about to show a side of himself that no one had ever seen before. The story he would tell next would shake the tech industry to its core. But more importantly, it would force everyone in that room, himself included, to confront the true cost of rushing toward the future without considering who they might be leaving behind. It started with a phone call at 2 a.m., he began, his voice trembling. When they told me just how bad the damage really was. The room leaned forward as one, waiting to hear what came next. In the back, someone had started recording on their phone. Within hours, this moment would go viral, but not for the reasons anyone expected. Because what Elon Musk said next would change everything. The call came from our environmental assessment team, he continued, his voice barely above a whisper. They'd found a nesting ground for endangered sea turtles near the debris field. The whole colony, gone. He pulled out his phone, hands shaking as he swiped through it. I have the pictures here. I've been looking at them every night since then. Can't sleep, can't eat. He looked up at the crowd. Would you like to see them, Mr. Musk? A board member stood up quickly. I strongly advise against. No more hiding, Musk cut him off. He turned to the tech team. Put them on the main screen. The images that appeared made several people gasp. Dead turtles on the beach, their shells covered in dark residue, destroyed nests, environmental workers in hazmat suits collecting samples. I used to tell everyone that the environmental impact was minimal, Musk continued, his voice growing stronger with confession. That it was an acceptable cost for advancing humanity. God, I actually believed that. He stood up suddenly, pacing the stage. You know what I did after that 2 a.m. call? I drove to the SpaceX facility. Walked right past security, down to the engineering floor. Found the youngest engineer on duty, kid named Marcus. Fresh out of college. A young man in the audience shifted uncomfortably. Marcus, Musk called out. You're here, right? Tell them what you said to me that night. Marcus stood slowly, his face red. Sir, I don't think. Please. They need to hear it. I need to hear it again. Marcus cleared his throat. You came to my desk at 2:30 a.m. You looked different. Asked me what I was working on. I told you I was reviewing the launch protocols, trying to understand what went wrong. And then? Marcus looked down. I said maybe we're moving too fast. That my professors at MIT taught us to triple-check everything. That, in the space industry, slow is smooth and smooth is fast. And what did I do? Musk pressed. You sat down next to me. Started crying, said your son would never look at you the same way again. The room was dead silent. Sarah had stopped trying to intervene. She stood at the side of the stage, tears streaming down her face. That night, Musk continued, I stayed in the facility until dawn, went through every safety report we'd rushed past, every warning we'd ignored. Called my son's mother at 6 a.m., crying like a baby. His phone buzzed again. He looked at it, let out a bitter laugh. Tesla stock just dropped another 5%. Board's calling for an emergency meeting. He held up the phone. Anyone want to know what else is happening? Twitter's exploding. News helicopters are filming more dead wildlife washing up. The EPA's about to announce. He stopped suddenly, his voice breaking. None of it matters. None of the stock prices or PR statements or emergency meetings matter. Because last night, my 10-year-old son asked me if I was a bad person, and I couldn't answer him. The woman in the blue blazer who had first confronted him stood up again. Mr. Musk. Please, he interrupted. Call me Elon. I don't deserve the formality anymore. Elon, she said, her voice softer now. Why are you telling us all this? He walked to the edge of the stage, sat down with his legs dangling over the side like a child. Because I'm tired, he said simply. Tired of pretending I'm infallible. Tired of acting like every failure is just a stepping stone to success. Tired of telling myself that the collateral damage doesn't matter. A senior SpaceX executive started walking toward the stage, probably to try to stop what was happening. But he froze when Musk's next words echoed through the room. I need to show you something else, Musk said, pulling out his laptop. Something nobody outside SpaceX has seen. The real reason these launches failed. The moment where I chose speed over safety. Where I chose my ego over everything else. The room collectively held its breath. What happened next would be more than just another corporate moment. It would be the kind of raw, unscripted truth that could either destroy or redeem a man's legacy. And Elon Musk, the man who had built his empire on promises of the future, was about to reveal the painful truth about his past. Version 2 of 2. The auditorium's AV team scrambled to connect Musk's laptop to the main screen. The silence was punctuated only by the soft clicking of journalists' keyboards and the occasional buzz of phones capturing this unprecedented moment. "Before I show you this," Musk said, his voice steadier now, "I need to tell you about 2 nights ago." Sarah, his PR chief, had given up trying to stop him. She sat in the front row, head in her hands, as years of carefully crafted public relations crumbled. "Mr. Musk," the AV technician said, "we're ready whenever you." "Not yet." Musk raised his hand. "They need to understand the context first." He stood up, pacing the stage slowly. "2 nights ago, at exactly 3:17 a.m., I was sitting in my office at SpaceX, staring at the wall. Couldn't sleep. Hadn't slept properly in days. The room was dark, except for my phone screen, showing endless notifications about our failures." A young engineer in the second row nodded unconsciously. Many of them knew those sleepless nights. "Then, someone knocked on my door. I almost didn't answer. Thought it might be another lawyer with more bad news. But it was Maria from the night shift cleaning crew." He paused, a slight smile crossing his face for the first time. "Maria's been with us for 6 years. She's walked past my office thousands of times, never knocked before. But that night, she brought me coffee and said something I'll never forget." The room leaned forward slightly. She said, "Mr. Musk, my grandson Tommy used to tell everyone his abuela cleaned the offices where they build rockets to Mars. Now he doesn't mention it anymore. He says rockets are bad for the fish." Someone in the back of the room let out a soft, "Oh." "That's when I did something I should have done months ago. I left my office and went down to the control room, not for a scheduled meeting or a press opportunity. Just to sit, to watch, to listen." He turned to his laptop and pressed a key. The giant screen behind him flickered to life. "This is from that night," he said quietly. "Nothing staged, nothing prepared. Just the reality of what happens when the cameras are off and the tweets stop." The footage showed the SpaceX control room at 3 a.m. The usual bustle was replaced by a skeleton crew, their faces lit by monitor glow. Empty coffee cups and energy drink cans littered the desks. In the corner, a young engineer was sleeping on a cot. "That's Amy," Musk pointed. "She hasn't gone home in 3 days. Been analyzing the telemetry data from the last failure nonstop." The camera moved through the room, obviously handheld. Musk's voice could be heard off-screen. "Can I sit with you guys for a while?" The engineers looked up, startled. One nearly spilled his coffee. "Sir? Is everything okay?" a voice asked. "No," the Musk in the video replied. "Nothing's okay, but I'm tired of pretending it is." The current Musk, standing on stage, paused the video. "This is where it gets difficult," he said. "What you're about to see is the moment I finally faced the truth. The moment I stopped being the CEO and started being a human being again." A board member stood up. "Elon, please think about what you're doing. The shareholders." "The shareholders deserve the truth," Musk cut him off. "Everyone does." He pressed play again. The footage showed him sitting down at an empty workstation, surrounded by engineers who looked uncertain whether to continue working or pay attention to their boss. "Show me, video," Musk said. "Show me everything we ignored, every warning we dismissed, every safety protocol we rushed." One engineer, identified as Jeff in his badge, spoke up hesitantly. "Sir, about 3 months ago, my team filed a report about the fuel containment system. We had concerns about—" "I remember," video, Musk interrupted. "I dismissed it, said we couldn't delay the launch, said our simulations showed it was fine." "Yes, sir." "Show me the report." The footage continued, as Jeff pulled up document after document. Each one a warning. Each one dismissed in the rush to meet self-imposed deadlines. Present-day Musk paused the video again. His hands were shaking. "Want to know the worst part?" he asked the silent room. "Every single one of these warnings was right. Every engineer who raised a concern was correct. And I ignored them all because I was so focused on proving the critics wrong. On hitting the deadlines I'd tweeted about. On maintaining the image of the genius who never fails." He walked to the edge of the stage again. "There's more. Would you like to see what happened next?" The woman in the blue blazer, who had started this whole confrontation, stood up again. "Why are you showing us this?" she asked. "Why now?" Musk looked at her for a long moment. "Because your brother's fishery isn't the only thing I destroyed. I destroyed something even more valuable. Trust. The trust of my teams. The trust of my children. The trust of communities like yours." He turned back to the screen. "This next part, this is where we found the fault. The real fault. And it wasn't in the rockets." He pressed play once more. The footage showed him hunched over a computer with 3 engineers examining technical diagrams. The timestamp showed 4:45 a.m. "There," one engineer said, pointing at the screen. "If we had run the full test sequence like the original protocol demanded, we would have caught it." Video, Musk finished. "Such a simple thing, such a basic test, but I rushed it. Because of a tweet, because of my ego." The current Musk watched the screen, tears forming in his eyes again. "You know what happened next?" he asked the room. "These engineers, these brilliant people who I'd ignored and dismissed, stayed with me until sunrise. Not because I asked them to, not because they had to, but because they still believed in the mission, even after all my mistakes." He stopped the video on a frame showing the control room at dawn, sunlight streaming through windows onto exhausted faces. "I've been calling them failures," he said quietly. "Our failed launches, our failed tests. But I was wrong. There was only one failure in all of this." He turned to face the audience directly. "Me. I failed. Not the rockets, not the engineers, not the technology. I failed because I forgot the most important lesson in both science and humanity. The truth doesn't care about your schedule. Nature doesn't care about your ego. And no amount of success is worth destroying what we're trying to save." The room was absolutely still. Even the journalists had stopped typing, captivated by the raw honesty of the moment. "There's one more clip I need to show you," Musk said, his finger hovering over the laptop. "The moment we realized exactly how much damage we'd caused. The moment I finally understood what my arrogance had done to your community. What happened next would be replayed millions of times around the world. But for everyone in that room, it wasn't about the viral moment or the headlines it would generate. It was about watching a man finally face the full weight of his choices and choose truth over pride, humanity over image, redemption over denial." Musk's finger hovered over the play button. In the front row, Sarah had stopped crying and was watching with a mix of horror and fascination. The board members had stopped trying to intervene. This was happening, whether they liked it or not. "This last clip," Musk said, his voice rough with emotion, "was taken at 5:30 a.m. We were all exhausted. Some of the engineers had been there for 36 hours straight. But we needed to understand, really understand." He pressed play. The screen showed a different room now, the Environmental Impact Assessment Center. Maps and data displays covered the walls. In the center, a large holographic display showed the Gulf Coast. "Show me everything." Video, Musk demanded. "Every impact zone. Every affected area. Don't sugarcoat it." A woman in a lab coat, Dr. Helen Chen, the head of environmental assessment, stepped forward. "Mr. Musk, are you sure you want to?" "Everything, Helen. No more hiding." Dr. Chen nodded to her team. The holographic display zoomed in on the coast. Red zones started appearing, spreading like bloodstains across the blue water. "The first debris field," she explained, pointing. "Initial impact caused a shock wave that stunned marine life in a 3-mile radius. Then the fuel dispersal. More red zones appeared. Then orange. Then yellow. Each color represents a different type of damage." Present day, Musk explained to the audience. "Red for immediate impact, orange for chemical contamination, yellow for long-term ecosystem effects." The map kept changing. More colors, more zones. The damage spreading like a virus across the coastline. "Stop, video," Musk suddenly said. "Go back. What's that small inlet there?" The camera zoomed in. Dr. Chen hesitated. That's the Rodriguez family fishery, sir." Present-day Musk looked directly at the woman in the blue blazer. "Your brother's life work, right there in that tiny inlet. And watch what happens when we overlay the contamination data." The visualization showed the red zone washing over the inlet like a tide of blood. "My God," Video, Musk whispered. How many? How many fisheries? How many families? Dr. Chen's voice was quiet but clear. 17 family businesses directly impacted. Approximately 300 people's livelihoods affected. And that's just the immediate economic impact. The long-term ecological damage. The video showed Musk sitting heavily in a chair, staring at the display. Sir? One of the team members asked. Should we prepare a public statement? The PR team has a draft that downplays the number. Video. Musk's voice was firm. No more downplaying. No more PR spin. No more hiding behind corporate bullshit. He stood up, walked to the holographic display, and reached out to touch one of the red zones. These aren't just colors on a map, he said. These are people's lives, their dreams, their futures. He turned to the camera. Why didn't anyone show me this before? Dr. Chen's response was barely audible. We tried, sir, many times. But you were always too busy. Always focused on the next launch, the next deadline, the next tweet. The present-day Musk paused the video again. The room was so quiet you could hear the air conditioning humming. You want to know the real failure? He asked, his voice breaking. It wasn't the technology. It wasn't the science. It was my refusal to listen. My arrogance in thinking that my dreams of Mars were more important than your lives here on Earth. He pressed play one final time. The footage showed him walking out of the Environmental Assessment Center as dawn broke over the SpaceX facility. He stopped at the window, looking out at the sunrise. Get me everyone, video, Musk said to someone off camera. Engineers, environmental team, safety officers. Everyone. We're going to go through every detail, every warning we ignored, every shortcut we took. And then. Present-day Musk finished the sentence along with his recorded self. And then we're going to make it right. He closed the laptop. The screen went dark. For a moment, no one moved. No one spoke. The only sound was the soft sob from somewhere in the back of the room. That night changed everything, Musk said quietly. But not because of what we discovered about the rockets, because of what I discovered about myself. He walked to the center of the stage, looking more vulnerable than anyone had ever seen him. I've spent my life pushing boundaries, breaking rules, moving fast and breaking things. I told myself it was necessary for innovation, for progress. He paused, looking out at the sea of faces. But I was wrong. Some things, once broken, can't be fixed with money or technology or tweets. The woman in the blue blazer stood up again, tears streaming down her face. Mr. Musk. But before she could finish, Musk did something that would become the most viral moment of the entire event. Something that would change the relationship between tech giants and the communities they impact forever. The auditorium had transformed. What started as a hostile environment had shifted into something else entirely. A space of raw truth and vulnerability. Elon Musk stood center stage. No longer behind the podium. No longer hiding behind corporate armor. So here's what we're going to do differently, he announced, his voice finding a new kind of strength. Not the brash confidence of old, but something tempered by humility. Sarah, his PR chief, had finally given up trying to control the situation. She sat in the front row, typing rapidly on her phone, trying to manage the tsunami of media requests pouring in. First, Musk continued, effective immediately. All launch schedules will be set by engineering milestones, not public announcements, not tweets, not promises to investors. A SpaceX engineer, in the third row, sat up straighter. Tom, Musk called out to him. You're our head of safety protocols, right? Tom nodded, looking surprised at being addressed directly. How many times in the past year did your team request additional testing time? Tom cleared his throat nervously. 17 times, sir. And how many times did I approve those requests? 3. The admission sent murmurs through the crowd. Musk nodded grimly. That changes today. We're establishing an independent safety board. They'll have complete veto power over launches. No exceptions, no overrides, not even from me. A board member stood up. Elon, you can't just make these decisions without. Watch me, Musk cut him off. And that's just the start. He walked to the edge of the stage, looking directly at the woman in the blue blazer who had first confronted him. Your brother's fishery, the others affected by our failures. We're not just going to compensate you, we're going to rebuild with you. He pulled out his phone, started typing. Right now, I'm authorizing the creation of a $500 million community restoration fund. But here's the key difference. It won't be managed by SpaceX. It will be managed by a board made up of community members, environmental experts, and yes, the families we've hurt. The room erupted in whispers. A Reuters journalist jumped to his feet. Mr. Musk, are you saying you're giving control of $500 million to the very people suing SpaceX? Yes. The simplicity of his answer silenced the room. Because they're the ones who understand the real cost of our failures, not in dollars, but in destroyed dreams and broken trust. He turned to the giant screen behind him, pulled up a new document. Starting today, every environmental impact assessment will be published publicly before each test. Full transparency, no redactions, no corporate speak. Sarah finally found her voice. Sir, the shareholders. We'll have to accept that profit isn't our only metric anymore. Musk's voice was firm. And speaking of metrics, he paused, taking a deep breath. What he said next would send shockwaves through the tech industry. Effective immediately, my entire compensation package at SpaceX will be tied to safety metrics and environmental compliance, not stock price, not launch schedules, not Twitter followers. The board members were now openly protesting, but Musk continued. Every executive at SpaceX will face the same standards. Your bonuses, your stock options, all of it will depend on how well we protect the communities we impact, not how fast we move or how much profit we make. A young engineer stood up. Sir, what about the Mars timeline? The colonization goals? Musk smiled sadly. Mars isn't going anywhere, but these communities, these ecosystems we're destroying, they might. We can't build a future on other planets by destroying the one we have. He walked back to center stage, pulled up another document on the screen. This is my personal pledge. Not a PR statement. Not a corporate promise. My word, backed by legal commitments. The document outlined his new compensation structure, the safety board's powers, the community fund's governance. I'm signing this right now, he said, pulling out a pen. And I want witnesses. He looked out at the crowd. Miss Rodriguez, he called to the woman in the blue blazer. Would you come up here? You should be the first to witness this. She stood slowly, made her way to the stage. Her hands were shaking as she took the pen from him. Why should we trust you? She asked quietly. You shouldn't, Musk replied. Not yet. Trust has to be earned back. That's why this isn't just a promise. It's a legally binding commitment. And you'll be part of the oversight committee ensuring we keep it. As she signed, more people were called to the stage. Environmental experts, community leaders, engineers who had tried to raise alarms. One more thing, Musk said as the last signature was added. I owe someone else an answer. He pulled out his phone, dialed a number, put it on speaker. Dad? A young voice answered. Hey buddy, Musk said, his voice thick with emotion. Remember when you asked me if I was a bad person? The room held its breath. Yeah. I finally have an answer for you. I'm a person who made bad choices, but starting today, I'm choosing to do better, and I want you to hold me accountable to that promise. There was a pause on the line. Like when you make me admit when I'm wrong and fix it? Musk laughed, tears in his eyes. Exactly like that. Want to help me fix some things? Can I come see the fishery when you rebuild it? Ms. Rodriguez, still standing on stage, covered her mouth to hold back a sob. Yes, Musk said, looking at her. We'll all work on it together. Because that's the thing I finally learned. The most important innovation isn't in our rockets or our technology. It's in how we take responsibility for our impact on others. As he ended the call, the room erupted in applause. Not the polite applause of corporate events, but the raw, emotional response to witnessing genuine change. Sarah was still sitting in the front row, shaking her head in disbelief. The media's going crazy, she said. This is going to change everything. Good, Musk replied, because that's exactly what we need. 3 months later, Mike Rodriguez's fishery was indeed back in business. New equipment, cleaner waters, and a restored ecosystem. And when the next Starship finally launched, after passing every safety check and environmental assessment, he was there in the front row, watching it soar safely into the sky. But that was just the beginning of the change that started in that auditorium. Because, sometimes, The greatest innovations don't come from technology or genius or billions of dollars. Sometimes, they come from the simple, human act of admitting when you're wrong and choosing to do better. The days following Musk's revelation transformed both SpaceX and the tech industry. As he walked through the SpaceX facility the next morning, engineers stopped to applaud. Not for his wealth or vision, but for his humanity. Mr. Musk, a young intern, called out, running to catch up with him. I just wanted to say, call me Elon, he said softly. We're all just people trying to do better now. The intern nodded, tears in her eyes. My family has a beach house in Galveston. We used to watch the launches from the deck. After the accidents, my dad said we should sell it. But now he wants to help with the restoration project. Throughout the facility, changes were already visible. The countdown clocks showing time to next launch had been replaced with displays tracking environmental metrics and safety milestones. In the main control room, a new screen showed real-time data from the affected coastal areas. Sir, Tom, the head of safety protocols, approached with a stack of papers. The independent safety board candidates are ready for review. We've included several critics of our previous protocols, people who've been vocal about our failures. Musk took the papers, smiled. Good. We need their perspective. Schedule the interviews in the affected communities. Let's go to them. Sarah appeared, looking both exhausted and energized. The media response is overwhelming. Every major network wants an interview. The Wall Street Journal is calling it a paradigm shift in corporate responsibility. Even your competitors are. Not now, Musk interrupted. We have more important meetings first. He headed to his car, where Miss Rodriguez was waiting. They had a date with her brother's fishery. The drive to Matagorda Bay was quiet at first. Then Miss Rodriguez, Maria, as she'd finally allowed him to call her, spoke up. My brother still doesn't believe you're coming, she said. Says it's all for show. I know, Musk replied. I wouldn't believe me either. That's why we're not just going to talk, we're going to work. The fishery came into view. Once pristine docks were stained with chemical residue. Idle boats bobbed in the contaminated water. And there, on the main pier, stood Mike Rodriguez. So, Mike said as they approached, his voice hard. The billionaire finally comes to see the little people. Musk didn't respond immediately. Instead, he walked to the edge of the pier, knelt down, touched the oily water. When I was a kid in South Africa, he finally said, my dad took me fishing once. I was terrible at it, impatient, wanted instant results. He stood up, turned to Mike. I never learned the lesson then, about patience, about respecting the natural rhythm of things. Maybe you can teach me now. Mike's stern expression flickered. What? I'm here to learn, Mike, really learn. Not just throw money at the problem and fly away in my private jet. I want to understand what we destroyed. What it really means to build something over generations, not just fiscal quarters. He rolled up his sleeves. Show me everything. How you built this place, how it works, what we broke. I'm not leaving until I understand. And so began a long day that would be remembered by everyone present. Elon Musk, the tech billionaire, spent hours learning about tide patterns, fishing regulations, ecosystem balance. He helped clean contaminated equipment, listened to stories about the fishery's history, and took detailed notes about every aspect of the operation. As the sun set, Mike finally asked the question that had been hanging in the air. Why? Why this way? You could have just sent a team of experts. Musk looked out over the water, now golden in the fading light. Because I needed to feel it, he said. Really feel it. The same way my son felt when his classmates showed him those videos. The same way your sister felt when she stood up in that auditorium. Some things can't be understood from a boardroom. He pulled out his phone, showed Mike the environmental impact data they'd been collecting. See these readings? They're not just numbers anymore. They're your story, your family's story. And now it's part of our story too. The next week, the restoration work began in earnest, but it wasn't just about cleaning up the physical damage. SpaceX engineers worked alongside local fishermen, learning from each other. Environmental experts collaborated with community members to design better monitoring systems. And true to his word, Musk's compensation that year was zero. SpaceX had met its new safety metrics, but the environmental goals were still a work in progress. When shareholders protested, he said simply, "My salary shouldn't be higher than the profit of the smallest fishery we impacted." The story could have ended there, a powerful moment of corporate responsibility and personal redemption. But real change ripples outward, touching lives in unexpected ways. 1 month later, Musk received a video call while working late at SpaceX. It was Mike Rodriguez. "You need to see this," Mike said, turning his phone camera toward the water. There, in the early morning light, a pod of dolphins was swimming past the restored fishery. The water was clear, the docks clean. And on one of the boats, Mike's young daughter was watching in wonder. "First time they've been back since the accidents?" Mike said quietly. Musk didn't speak for a moment. Then, "Send me the video?" "Why?" "Because my son needs to see this too. He needs to know that when you admit your mistakes and work hard to fix them, healing is possible." The next day, in a simple tweet that would become his most liked ever, Musk posted the dolphin video with a single line. "Success isn't just about reaching the stars. Sometimes it's about healing the seas we've hurt along the way." The real measure of change isn't in grand gestures or viral moments. It's in the quiet transformations that follow. In the way Mike's daughter now waves at SpaceX engineers when they come to check the water quality. In the way young tech entrepreneurs started including environmental impact assessments in their pitch decks. In the way Musk's son began proudly telling his classmates about the fishery his dad helped restore. Because sometimes the greatest innovation isn't about disrupting markets or revolutionizing industries. Sometimes it's about disrupting our own egos, revolutionizing our own hearts, and learning that the truest form of progress is measured not in the heights we reach, but in the healing we enable along the way.